Hey, deserving listeners, after I recorded and posted several hours of reaction videos to the Paris Hilton documentary, I thought I would condense it down to like the best 40 minutes, the most relevant clips. So let's get to that. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. Let's see if anything of interest comes out of my face.
When you have to travel every day, basically, to maintain a relationship, unless you're going to have some bitch boy following me around like they always do, and I lose all respect for them.
Immediately.
They become emasculated. I'm like...
You need to date an equal.
But I feel like anyone...
You can't control an equal.
She just said that she doesn't want just a bitch boy. And by that, I assume what she means is she doesn't want to marry someone who isn't on her level, whatever that means. We would imagine that 99.9% of the value or the interaction value of a marriage is independent of the way you're seen on Instagram. And then we also hear them talking about how she, doesn't want to be with a man and then have him be emasculated. Well, what does that mean? Well, that could mean that the man she's with earns less than she does, is less important. For anyone, when they're looking for a significant other where you are in love, you're a good match, you communicate well, you have a lot in common, for her to limit herself that are making more money than her in the world, extremely limiting. So this notion of masculinity and how men are supposed to be, it just drives me crazy. Let's broaden our understanding beyond the 1950s regarding our understanding of what men are.
It was my first real relationship, 18. I was just so in love with him and I wanted to make him happy. And he was kind of pressuring me into it, like, oh, you're so boring. Do you want me to just call someone else? No one will ever see it.
In the beginning they said that I raped her and she was incapacitated and you couldn't see the whites of her eyes. And, I have a full color version on trustfundgirls.com, trustfundgirls.com. You can see it was two people in love enjoying sex. Everybody has sex and it's, two people very much in love and having a good time.
It was like being electronically raped.
He released it and she did not want it to be released. If that is true, yikes.
Why are you doing this?
I'm doing this because I have a new boyfriend who's going to be here while I'm gone. I do want to know what's happening when I'm not here. Put this on the phone so it's live.
So she is going to put cameras in her place so she can secretly spy on a guy that she's dating while she's not home. Is that what she's saying? Uncool. I get if you're worried, for sure. But there are other more ethical ways to make yourself feel less insecure. Some people might say, well, she's videotaping because she has been videotaped in her past, and so she's getting back at people. Two wrongs don't make it right.
I think I just got addicted to the nightlife. I felt accepted. I just felt like the queen of the night.
And then she's a young adult, and she goes to the clubs, and then she's accepted. This is, potentially a very formative event for her that she might still be living in. And when she steps out of that vibe of the crowds and the chaos, and so she comes always back to whatever vibe she got when she was in these clubs.
So I felt like I was just kind of sent away to be hidden.
All you ever wanted was the best for your child.
I first sent her to an outdoor wilderness program.
It's for teenage boys and girls needing a change of attitude and direction.
A lot of families in the world and in my town would have a teenager that they'd be really worried about. You try lots of different things. You try talking to them. You try discipline. You try grounding. You take away their screens. And their behavior doesn't get any better. In fact, it just gets worse over time. And so parents will feel responsible. They'll feel like, well, I have to do something, right? There's not a lot you can do beyond a certain threshold. To the privileged class, they actually can send kids to these sorts of what might be called boot camps, this kind of thing. Sometimes you even have to force the kid to go, which means you have to hire goons, essentially, like bodyguards or ruffians, if you will, to roll up to your house. And I would, as a family therapist, I would actually observe this. And the goons would come out, grab the child, throw them in the van, and drive them across state lines. So in Washington State, from my memory, because I don't treat families anymore, you can't involuntarily detain a teenager. Teenagers have rights in Washington State where I live. But there are other states, I believe Utah, and particularly like when you go south of the border in Mexico, children don't have those rights. And so you have to hire goons from those states to come to your state, take the kid, and then once they're in that state, then you can actually essentially imprison them in these sort of therapeutic camps. At the beginning of my career, I was like, well, I don't know. I don't know much about these sorts of things. Maybe they work, maybe they don't. What I found, this is just anecdotal, is that they never worked. These sorts of camps never worked for a variety of reasons. One is that, if you exert total control over a child, then their behavior will change because they don't have a choice. So if you sent a kid to this sort of camp, they're going to stop going to clubs and they're going to stop talking back to you. Why? Because they don't have a choice. They're imprisoned, essentially. But as soon as they came back, within 24 hours, sometimes the kid would be even worse than they were prior. There are a lot of different reasons for this. One is that the kids are so hurt and they're so demoralized by the parents disrespecting them to such a degree that the kids are just like, when I get out of here, all bets are off. I'm done with those parents. I had at least kind of a shred of connection and mutual goodwill with my parents prior to what they did. What they did to me now, I am now cold. I've put up my walls. I hate my parents. In fact, I hate everyone. And as soon as I'm out of here, I'm just going to run away and screw all those people. And I'm going to avoid them because if I don't, then they're just going to put me right back into one of those kinds of camps. Now, can they work? Yeah. Sometimes they can work. Sometimes some kids, they just need a little bit of time to sober up, get away from bad influences, to grow up a little bit. Certainly as a family therapist, I would see that. But sometimes the damage done by the parents essentially imprisoning your children is so great that the relationship has plummeted so much between child and parent that it's way worse for the situation. Because, one of the things that I discovered, so early in my career, I don't know if I was taught this or I just had this idea, that children and teenagers, the reason why they follow rules is because there's good structure and there's good discipline. What I found was that is not true. For the vast majority of kids and teenagers, the reason why they follow the rules is because they have a good connection with their parents and they have a good connection with authority. They follow the rules because emotionally they want to please you. Now, you might look at your kid and you might be like, I don't think my kid wants to please me. Well, they probably do deep down. They probably just don't like to admit it and they don't like to signal that. But I found that to be universally true. And the more discipline you do, actually that can cause your child to be more disconnected from you, which actually lowers their motivation to follow your rules. So you can force a kid to follow your rules by doing these kinds of things, but by doing so, you might be eroding the very thing that actually causes them to want to follow rules in the first place, which is their love for you, their connection with you, their desire not to disappoint you, that kind of thing. So I would see a lot of bad things from these camps. And actually, I would see sort of middle class, mid-level income families where they would literally take a second mortgage out on their home or condo to fund one of these camps. It would all be worthless. The other thing here is that these businesses, they are businesses, make no doubt about it. These boot camps, I don't know this one in particular, they make a lot of money. How do they make money? By getting parents to sign up for this service. Their bank account depends on parents believing that their camp works. Well, how do they do that? Well, they have dubious research projects that promote the notion that find that they have a 98% success rate. You see these websites, and I've seen them. Back in the day, it was brochures, and they would claim very high success rates. Well, when you actually look at the real research, actual outside research looking at these sorts of things, the success rate is far lower. So do not believe the hype when you look at these websites and the claims that they make.
We were building other camps, basically doing manual labor all day long. It was just constant yelling at, like, boot camp style. So I whispered to one of the girls, like, let's get out of here tonight. We ran through cornfields, through mountains. The guys that worked at the camp grabbed us, and then we got back and they literally just beat the hell out of us in front of everyone, just to let everyone know, if you run away, this is what happens.
Yikes. Wow. Imagine what you would feel as a child in a situation like this. I finally found my tribe, which was at the clubs. I finally found people that make me feel like I matter in the world. Because of your image, because you worried about the tittering that was happening, but behind your back, you ripped me away from my one source of self-esteem and threw me into a labor camp. And now I'm being beaten because of you. You can imagine that would really cause you to distrust other people, particularly people that are close to you.
I'm like, please, can I just go home? I've already been through so much. I promise I'll never go to a club again. Please, like, I can't go back to these places. Like, you've no idea. There was no convincing them, no matter what I said. So I just didn't trust them. It made me not trust anyone, not even my own family.
Basically, they conclude that their family does not love them. Their family doesn't even really like them. And that family cannot be trusted, that people can't be trusted. Also, they might even conclude that they're not lovable, that they don't deserve respect, that they don't deserve people to really think about their feelings. And so they put up walls. The main hypothesis I would have with her is that she has a lot of walls up, that she doesn't let people in. Why? Because she is afraid they're going to hurt her. They're going to reject her. They're going to put her in a prison camp. And so she suffers as a result. And she's replaced human connection and vulnerability with success in entertainment and in her product lines and in fame, and feels as though that actually gets her some level of security and some level of worth.
My last vacation was probably when I was 15. It's just been nonstop work, but for some reason it's hard for me to relax. New app on my phone which tells you like the amount of time you spend on social media. Usually I'm like up to here, 16 hours and 19 minutes. When you add up all those hours in your life, it's literally like years of your life spent just like looking at a phone. It's just beyond.
We tend to shame this sort of thing. We tend to look at people that are on social media a lot and say, oh, shame on you, you're narcissistic, there's something wrong with you, that kind of thing. When we look at Paris and we see her, she's like she's on vacation. She's in this beautiful location and she lays down and she's like, okay, I finally have a vacation, I'm gonna try to relax. And she gets bored and then she picks up her phone and then she's posting and she's doing all these things. As a society, we look at that and we say, gross, there's something wrong with you, you're empty, you're narcissistic, you're materialistic, what's wrong with you? What I see is a traumatized individual who has found a solution to her trauma because society and clinicians have not provided her a better solution.
I love you, please stop, please. No, don't love me. I'm begging you, stop! I started 4 minutes. Please! I started 3 minutes. Do not ruin my set. Can I have his f***ing bracelets cut off? Can we cut his bracelets off? Can we cut his f***ing bracelets off? He's f***ing ruining my entire set. Okay, please stop. Please, please. I'm gonna start crying on my set. Please. Jesus Christ. God. Oh my God. Are you psychotic?
This is troubling. So we're not quite sure what's happening here, but it looks like he's pestering her as she's about to go on stage. And she's like begging him to stop. This is troubling. This is very troubling. I don't know exactly what's happening, but that's what it looks like what's happening.
Way too many computers. This is not all like different relationships, but anytime I do have a new boyfriend, I always get a full new computer because they always break into my computers or they'll scream at me and threaten me. Give me your password now.
What? Wow. That is interesting. I've talked about this a lot. Jealousy can result in anger, can result in abusive behavior. And at the basis of it is a fear of abandonment, a fear that you're going to lose someone, a fear you're going to lose attachment.
Did she tell you she was put into solitary?
When you mean solitary, what do you mean?
Solitary confinement. Treating children like they're in a prison instead of a school?
Are you serious? She's never told me that. In Utah?
Interesting. So earlier I said that a lot of the kids in Seattle would get dragged to Utah because, from my memory, Utah was more lax regarding child rights, and that in Washington State, where I live, you couldn't imprison a child in one of these group camps, but you could in Utah. And so they would send thugs from Utah to grab kids, with the parents' authorization, and the parents were paying for it, and they would drag the kid across state line and put them in these, what I'm terming a prison child camp. And so she just said, in Utah? It's interesting.
I look beyond.
No, you do not.
The woman has been up since 5 in the morning. I went to bed at 1:30.
The woman looks amazing.
I woke up 5 times, having nightmares as always. I have like dreams of like my real life. Like when I was like taken from my house, like by people and like being locked up somewhere.
Okay, interesting. So she's referring to that, I think, that process that I talked about where the parents will say, okay, we've got to get our kid to this camp. We got to get him across state line to Utah where there's more lax laws about child imprisonment. I'm saying imprisonment in quotes. But if we ask Paris to go there, she's not going to go. So, well, what are we going to do? Well, these camps will have services where you pay thugs to come to your house in the middle of the night, literally grab the kid, throw them into a van, hold them somehow until you can get into Utah. And then when you're in Utah or whatever state line, I don't know about New York City, that's where she was being grabbed from. Once you're across the state line, then the laws allow these paid people to actually diminish the rights of a child. I wonder if that's what her assault was, and I wonder if that's what her trauma was. We can certainly imagine that being true, right? I mean, I talked about this earlier in terms of like, I understand the impulse that parents have when they have a kid who is not following the rules. As a parent, you're very worried about the kid. You should be worried about that, and you should try to do something about that. And when you try all these different things and nothing works, I understand the impulse of just like, well, if we could just diminish their rights, then I can save this child. And yeah, you can actually do this, especially if you have the money, and the child will not be able to go to clubs anymore. So mission accomplished. But at what cost? Seemingly, for Paris, the cost was she will no longer feel that you love her. She will no longer trust other people, and she will be traumatized from the violence that this did to her.
I remember it was a school night. It was the middle of the night, and I just heard screaming, bloody murder. I knew there was a takedown in the works. I didn't know it was people coming in and capturing her.
Okay, this is exactly what I was talking about. You have paid physical human wranglers come to your home and take the child in the middle of the night. Why do they do it in the middle of the night? Well, because the child is usually in their bed, so you know where they're going to be. The child is usually groggy, so they don't fight back as much. There's a lot of reasons why you do it. But just imagine that. You're sleeping, and all of a sudden, these strange men are grabbing you physically and dragging you into a van, and then they hold you there and drive you to essentially a child prison camp.
I thought I was being kidnapped. I started screaming for my mom and dad, like, help me, and no one came.
Just imagine you're a kid, you're being grabbed by two men, you're screaming for your parents aren't there. Maybe these guys were like, look, we've been paid by your parents. Well, how are you supposed to know that's true? How are you supposed to trust these people that are grabbing you and dragging you away?
As they were taking me I saw my parents standing by their door crying. And I was like, please help me, what's happening? And no one would tell me what was happening.
And then in the morning.
Right. So just imagine that. You're a kid and two strangers grab you and are dragging you out of the house, and you think you're being kidnapped and you're going to die or something worse. And then you finally see your parents, and your parents are like, yes, this is what I want. Imagine the betrayal that you would feel. Imagine the feeling of like, oh, wait, you don't love me. Not only do you not love me, not only do you not care about my feelings, but you actually hired these people to do this to me. You actually want these people to do this to me. So it's awful. And as I've said before, I understand the impulse. You're worried about your kids. But overall, what I found was that these camps were a negative for the kid and the family for a variety of reasons, including this.
The last school that I went to was Provo Canyon School. And that was the worst of the worst. There's no getting out of there. You're sitting on a chair, staring at a wall all day long, getting yelled at or hit. I felt like a lot of the people who work there got off on torturing children and seeing them naked.
So I don't know about these allegations, but we could certainly see this happening in these boarding schools. That if you are a predator and you want to abuse people and maybe even children, maybe even girls, then you could see yourself being attracted to this sort of employment, right? So these sorts of organizations might, I don't know, I'd have to see the research, have a higher prevalence rate of predators. Who knows? But that's what Paris is saying. And it stands to reason.
They'd make people take their clothes off and go in there like for 20 hours. Felt like I was going crazy. Someone was in the other room that was like in a straitjacket, screaming. I was just freezing, I was starving, I was alone, I was scared. My parents were in New York. They didn't know. But I was so angry and so upset, I hated them.
Okay, so there it is. I hated them. I blamed them. I felt that they threw me in there on purpose. They didn't love me. The bond might have been fragile to begin with, and now it's completely severed. And when that happens, you just feel like, well, what's the point? Why try to love people? Why try to be loved? It never works out. And she seems to have exhibited that defense moving forward. I don't know, but she certainly seems to be telling us that.
I was at Provo for 11 months. And the only thing that saved my sanity was thinking about what I wanted to do and who I wanted to become when I got out of there. I was going to do everything in my power to be so successful that my parents could never control me again.
She was not in control of her own body. She was not in control of the medication she was taking. She was not in control of where she lived. She was not in control of the abuse that she was experiencing. And she saw a way out, which was through money. And money is power. Money is definitely power. And she is continually trying to chase that security and continually running away from the traumas that still plague her today. She perceives that earning more and more money, getting to $100 million, was going to make her feel better. But then she didn't feel better, as she said. And she set a new goal, $1 billion. Then I'll feel safe. As I said before, when we're traumatized and we're distressed daily, which it sounds like she is, she has nightmares, this sort of thing, you will look for a solution. You will look for a way out. For some people, it's, I'm going to have power and money, and that will save me. Whether or not it saves you is debatable. Doesn't seem to be actually helping her in the end. She's still suffering from nightmares. Other people will turn to substances. That will numb me. That will make me feel okay. Other people will turn to work workaholism. Other people will turn to having children as a way of alleviating that pain. Other people will turn to video games. All these things are distractions, and they can temporarily help, and I would never take that away from people. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't heal the underlying wounds.
This is iconic. Vanity Fair ended up doing a huge story on it. This was before The Simple Life, so this is basically how the world got to know me. Coming out of Provo, I was also very traumatized. I never spoke to my family about it. I think all my anger just went into my drive for success.
All right. All my anger went into my drive for success. And that is a good sublimation. It's like, okay, I'm gonna put this into productive energy. But does it heal the original pain that is causing anger to begin with? Doesn't seem like it for her.
It made me strong, but when I think about it, it gives me anxiety. It's really hard. I don't know. Maybe inside my mind I was thinking what I was doing in the picture. It's like a big you.
Okay, so she said something else there. She said that I feel anxiety when I think about it. That is a sign of trauma reactivity, maybe PTSD. When we're traumatized, our body and mind, we will be triggered sometimes later on, and our body will go into fight or flight, and we will feel that anxiety. And it can be very, very difficult. That anxiety, the triggered anxiety, can last for weeks for some people. It's not just like mild anxiety, like, oh, I remember then, and it was sort of sad for me, and it was kind of scary. No, your whole body goes into a state of fight or flight that sustains itself for a long time, and that can be very, very depressing and demoralizing. A lot of despair can result from that, of just like, oh, I'm in a constant state of confusion, my brain isn't working right, I can't sleep at night, I don't feel safe, I'm constantly looking over my shoulder. I don't know if that's what Paris is experiencing, but it certainly sounds like she's in that direction, at least.
Everything. It's a lot, and I don't know what I'm walking into. A couple years ago when I started researching and going into it and everything was coming back to me, I wanted to do something, but at the same time I was like, this is gonna hurt my brand. I can't have this as part of my business, and people won't understand. But if I don't do this, it's gonna continue to happen, and I'm gonna continue to always be traumatized and think about it for the rest of my life.
It can be part of the healing process to fight back, to make the report to CPS, to make the report to the police, to sue them, to raise awareness of what's happening. By gaining that power, you actually will feel more in power of yourself, and you grieve the pain that you went through when you were younger because people are asking you to talk about it. I wonder for Paris if making this documentary and all the press and all the talk that's happening after, I wonder if this is healing for her. The other possibility is that it's re-traumatizing to her. And without being careful, if you have a trauma condition, particularly PTSD, you can be re-triggered by these things such that your whole body goes into fight or flight because all the memories come flooding back, and it's too much. It's too much triggering, it's too much emotion, it's too much distress. And that can actually re-traumatize people. If I were her therapist, I would work with her, doing a lot of pre-work, a lot of preparation work to make sure that this wasn't going to re-traumatize her. So we'll see what happens.
I think one thing I can say is that they tried really hard to break me. And they caused a few cracks.
I don't think I met your best friend there, but we did find her, Jessica.
Jessica. She was such a badass.
I ended up in an abusive relationship after I left Provo. I'm thinking maybe being in places where they're abusive to you would make you think that that's a normal way to be.
Right. So it's one of the tragedies of being abused is that it normalizes abuse to you and your body and your mind. And then when it happens in the future, you think, oh, well, this is just life. This is just what happens. And so it just feels normal. And then as the abuse keeps happening, it just feels like, well, I deserve it, or everyone's like this, or this is just my life now, or this is the only way I can get love and attention. I deserve it deep down because I'm a bad person, because I've been told my whole life I've been a bad person. There's a lot of this in society, I'm telling you. There are so many children, teenagers, adults of all ages who have these schemas as a result of trauma and abuse.
There's a bunch of police reports we were able to gather, like from 2011 to 2014, 56 calls of assault to Provo Canyon School and 25 calls to the police in regards to sexual offenses. I'll also forward to, if you want to show this to your parents at all.
I love this. No, I want to, I'm just like processing this again.
By the way, if you watching suffer from PTSD, you definitely want to slow down with all these videos, and really anything that I do, because we sometimes run into this sort of thing. You want to monitor yourself. You want to check in with your body. How's your heart rate? Usually anxiety is in our chest. We usually feel it there. How's your breathing? You know, even people who haven't been traumatized, this can be very tense. So you want to, take care of yourself. You don't want these sorts of things to cause you damage. And so particularly for people with PTSD, taking a break, or maybe not even watching these kinds of things, because your trauma might be so similar to this, or this might be so triggering to you that you want to take a break. You don't want to just continue watching without checking in with your body. And for some of you, you've been traumatized so greatly that you're not even necessarily aware of what's happening in your body, because you learned it was better to cut yourself off from that. And so if you are one of those people, you might not know that you're rising into stress level until you're already a 9 out of 10. And so in those situations, you might want to just better safe than sorry and avoid stuff like this altogether. And I employ everyone, find a trauma specialist. Therapy can help with trauma. It can help if you have the right therapist. Sometimes it takes a long time. Sometimes it takes a month. Sometimes it takes a year. Sometimes it takes 25 years. But it's worth it. Every step of the way is worth it.
It's not easy. We all have to get to that point where we're ready to open up about it.
Yeah. I don't know if you have nightmares, but I have nightmares almost every night of me being taken.
Ever since I got kidnapped at 16, like a pin drops and I wake up. This like hypervigilance of like every situation. And I think like I still take that with me in like work and stuff like that, where I'm like scoping out like, how do I get out of here? Like what's in the situation? Like,
yeah. So the two of them are describing classic PTSD. Nightmares every night, hypervigilance, she said, worrying that at any moment someone's going to get you.
Even the tape, that never would have happened if I hadn't went to Provo. I was just so lost and desperate for love that I found the worst possible person. After being at that school, I just didn't want anyone to know, and I didn't want to be embarrassed. I was so obsessed with looking perfect on the outside. That's why I always have to project basically what I think the public wants.
Interesting. So that could be another reason why she's so focused on approval from the masses and getting $1 billion, is because if people approve of her, then she's safe and no one's going to cart her off to a child prison.
And now I see even little girls who are 10 years old, 9 years old, and they're trying to get the perfect selfie. They're putting the filters on. They can't even look at themselves on the phone without putting a filter. I can't even imagine being like a 13-year-old girl today.
Do you feel responsible for it? And many people have said you're the architect of that.
I do feel responsible for it.
I wouldn't blame her for it myself. I would blame our society. I mean, she didn't just spring out of nowhere. She came from our society as well. And our society is the same, if not worse than it was when she was coming up. So, by society, I mean, we teach kids that they need to be something other than themselves often. They need to have different noses and different hair and different skin tone and different personalities different body style, different height, different background, different accent. All sorts of things we teach everyone in our society, including kids, that they need to be different. They can't be who they are. They need to buy these products and then they will be this. They need to have this app on their phone and they will be this. And so Paris is not to blame for that.
People were to look at me like, whoa, Paris has a lot of issues.
Don't worry, I've got a lot.
The thing
my
is
fault.
that like these issues aren't issues that you like decided to create one day and have and walk around in the world with. You know what I mean? This isn't your shame. It's not her shame or hers or mine. It's their f***ing shame.
That's beautiful. It brings a tear to my eye, literally. Just beautiful. It's not your shame. If you've been abused, it is not your shame. It is the shame of the abuser. It was not your fault. You did not deserve it. It was a criminal act, an immoral, terrible act that someone else did, that they should be ashamed of, that they should be wronged for, that they should be stigmatized for, not you. You survived something. You lived through it. You're strong because you're still here. It's not your fault. You should have a medal pinned to your chest the way soldiers do when they come back from war. A Purple Heart, if you will. It is not your fault.
We've just been carrying it.
Amen. My name is Catherine McNamara, and I'm a survivor of Provo Canyon School.
I was force-fed. I was cut off from friends, family.
So that breaks my heart. For her, she said fear of therapy. It's just terrible.
I witnessed and endured physical abuse, restraints, emotional, mental abuse. I was forced onto medications. I was taught that everything that happened to me was all my fault. I'm speaking out because no child deserves to be punished for expressing their feelings. Especially when that punishment just equals more torture and more trauma. I've got to be done.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I've said this yet. I think it's obvious that some of the kids in these child prisons are being abused by terrible parents and being treated terribly by the parents, and they aren't well-meaning parents.
You are a f***ing warrior. We all are. We're all survivors. We're all warriors. And I don't want anyone to ever feel the way we do.
I'm really happy for Paris and the others and all the other survivors of any kind of trauma watching this show. I think Paris is doing something really great with her fame. All right, well, that does it for that best of video. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you did or you didn't in the comments below, or the thumbs up or the thumbs down, or subscribe and all those kinds of things. And everyone out there, if you need a therapist to help you with things, please get one. I implore you. And it may take a while to find the best one, but you deserve good therapy. And everyone out there also, please take care of yourself and take care of others, because we all deserve it. We really, really do.